Hi, I'm Bart Hanson. I'm the owner and lead instructor for CrushLivePoker.com. The following hand comes from our call-in show that we record every Mondays at 4:45 p.m. Pacific Time. If you enjoy the channel, please hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel. Turn notifications on and you will get an email link with this full episode. And if you want to submit to this show, take a look at the information in the description.
Or 10, 10, 25.
Oh,
with
10,
a
10,
$25
25.
ante.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, so the bike, so the villain in the hand, of course, is going to be in this particular hand is Ryan Feldman, who is sort of who used to be a part of Put the Games Down on Live the Bike, and he now sort of hosts these games, mostly like in that sort of private room. It's good that I've always talked about this. It's really good that these live games, I feel like, are going in this direction. I mean, I don't know if it's ever going to be, in terms of this blind and ante structure, I don't know if it's ever going to really be like this at 5-5, but a 3 blind game with an ante is just so much superior than like a 2 blind game with no ante, right? I mean, it's just much better game.
It's so good.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't play 2-blind poker. It's the worst.
Really?
Well, I mean, I guess I can play it. I just hate playing it.
Well, I've played a bunch of 5-5. That's part of me being here at the bike, and we're probably going to end the show with a hand that I played because I think it's interesting. And I texted you it earlier, Squish, but it's interesting about like how to maximize against a fish. But all right, let's get into this hand. So how deep are you guys?
This is about 11K effective, or no, 12K effective with Ryan.
Okay.
So Ryan opens under the gun to 100. I look down at red aces, and I 3-bet under the gun 1 to 325.
Ace of diamonds, ace of hearts, 325. Is this a full ring game, by the way?
Yeah, this is 8-handed at the time.
Okay, 8-handed.
So,
yeah.
Definitely not the guy in the plaid shirt. This is a guy wearing like all leather, who I have pegged as kind of like I've seen him do some things that are like not good.
Okay.
I have him pegged as kind of like a bad reg, or like, maybe like, yeah, probably like a bad reg, from the small blind cold calls.
Okay.
And he starts hand with about 6K. And then Ryan calls as well, so we're 3-handed.
So small blind, 6K, cold calls. That's never really going to be a good thing. Cold calls, and then UTG calls as well. Now, I did make a pretty exploitative flat call in the Barry game on Thursday, where I actually cold called 3-bet with 4-5 suited on the button. But that's a very, very special circumstance where it's a huge deviation where you think that the original raiser is not going to have a whole lot of 4-bets. And obviously I had position. I also thought that the 3-better was extremely tight. This was Lena, who was playing like 22% VPIP. I thought she was extremely tight because Turbo had opened from up front and she had 3-bet in mid position. And I thought we were deep enough for me to make that call. And I didn't think Turbo was going to 4-bet. Here, we know that Ryan can 4-bet all kinds of shit here, right? You know what I mean? Like, he's got like ace-4 suited. He's probably going to hop on that, don't you think, Squish? So it's a pretty bad spot to cold call 3-bets here in this scenario from the small blind.
Especially under the gun versus under the gun 1.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
So pot's like 1,000, right?
Yeah, pot's about 1,000.
Yeah.
Flop comes 9, 9, 3 deuce with 2 hearts.
All right, 9 of hearts, 8 of hearts, deuce.
9, 3 deuce.
9-3. Oh, 9-3 deuce. All right, so 9 of hearts, 3 of hearts, deuce of clubs. I'll put it up. Okay, so and you've got red ace. So you've got aces with the ace of hearts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Red aces.
Yeah.
So Ryan checks. I bet 300.
So small blind checks. Ryan checks.
Yeah, I bet 300. Small blind calls. Now Ryan also calls.
Okay. What about the sizing here? Like, what did you I mean, I feel like, yes, it's a multi-way pot, but I know that some of the stuff that we've done with top section and, No Limit continues to always evolve, and now some of the really good players are, there's different size. You're not always default betting like 1/3. I know that this is it's a multi-handed spot here, but I do feel like, especially when you've got aces, which kind of cuts down on your opponents having some ace highs, right, that they're going to call with. I might, on the surface, it looks like I might size up here because I don't think that Ryan or the small blind, if they're calling, especially the small blind, if cold calling with like pairs is going to fold if he's that bad where he's cold calling the small blind. I don't know. I mean, did you think about sizing up here?
I did, and I thought this would be a board I'd probably take a pretty large sizing, but just multi-way, I decided to go smaller. And actually, and this is kind of like backwards of optimal play, but I think I may take a large sizing here without having the ace of hearts. And I know it's like in optimal play, it's the other way around, but like I'm just like I don't see people like ever check raising me off my equity. Like I don't see people ever check raising as a bluff without just having three bet pots live.
Yeah.
So like that was my thought. Like I can kind of call a check raise with red aces with the heart, but yeah. So I for smaller sizing.
So you bet 300, small blind and Ryan call, so the pot now is 1900, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And we go to the turn. The turn is what I think is a pretty big blank. It's a 7, an offsuit 7, doesn't bring a backdoor flush draw.
Okay.
And both check to me again, and I bet 1,000.
So you bet half the size of the pot.
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of tough for us in these, when you put, like, if you're trying to play close to equilibrium here, these are really difficult situations to study because equilibrium solvers don't really do multi-way unless you get into Munker, which is a whole nother thing that I'm not super familiar with. But normally, if you were heads up here, you probably get to overbet this turn a lot, right? In a 3-bet pot, a non-connecting turn card like the 7 of spades here. Like, I wouldn't think it would be half pot, but I don't mind your bet. Like, it's sort of an exploitable. I like a half pot sizing some of the time just to get max value, like where a solver might go like pot. Like, you're just sort of going like half pot, 2/3 on clean runouts and things like that because you're trying to get like this small blind to call with like jacks or some bullshit. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I felt like if I just went like 3/4 pot here with him having Ryan behind him, he may make like a hero fold with like tens or something.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I don't want that to happen.
Right.
So I bet 1,000. Blind actually folds pretty quickly, and Ryan calls again.
So small blind folds, UTG calls. And now the pot's like 3,900, right? As we go to the river. Okay, river.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the river is an offsuit 8.
An offsuit 8. So
yeah,
I'm going to put the final board as 9 of hearts, 3 of hearts, deuce of clubs, 7 of spades, 8 of spades. So 9, 3, deuce, 7, 8. Front door hearts brick out. You have the ace of hearts in your hand. You bet 1/3 on the flop, call, turns a 7 of spades. You bet half the pot-ish on the turn. Small blind, who's next to act, folds. Ryan calls from under the gun, closing the action. 3,900. River is the 8 of spades. Let me ask you before you tell us what happens here. If Ryan checks here, what are you doing?
I think this is actually a check back. I just like I think like so many of his hands. This is like a pretty bad card for me. I think. I mean, I guess we can still get value from like tens and jacks. Maybe I think like he's 4-betting queens all the time.
Well, I think that's the critical inflection point here, and I tend to agree with you. I think it's pretty close, but I think the critical inflection point here is that if this was heads up, the entire hand was heads up, it would be much more likely to be a bet here. But because if we notice pre-flop configuration and the small blind flat call, he's so incentivized to 4-bet, he's going to have a much wider 4-bet range, like with queens plus, maybe even sometimes jacks, right? As opposed to if you were heads up, right, under the gun versus under the gun 1, right?
Yeah, so we're pretty much targeting like tens, like some of his jacks, and like ace 9, which is hard because we have the aces. So like, I think it's too thin. So my plan was to check back.
And then and he's going to have some misses, and also too, he might even have some hands that he's sort of. It's just hard for him to. Like I don't even if you were to bet like 2,000, I don't know if he's calling with like tens. Like your line looks so strong, you know what I mean? It's just because of the multi-way nature, right, of the
Yeah,
pot.
for sure, for
And
sure.
he's going to have some slow plays when the small blind basically folds out on turn, right? And then he very well you used a small sizing on the flop. He might overcall with eights on the flop and then continue on turn. So I mean, some of the sets might be represented here, nine, seven, or eight. That would be yeah. So I think it's pretty close. But that didn't happen. What ended up happening here?
He thinks for a bit, and then he leads for 1540.
So he bets 1540, which is into 3,900. So it's about it's under half the size of the pot. It's probably like 40-ish% the size of the pot. So the pot's going to be 54.50, right? 1540 for you to call. So you're getting about 3.5 to 1. And maybe some of the people in the live chat will be surprised by this, but when you texted me this on Saturday right away, I told you right away, I was like, I kind of feel like I would overfold here. When you have the ace of hearts in your hand, I just don't see what bluffs Ryan's going to be making this play with. He's not blocking with tens. He's been definitely shown to have a fair amount of hands that he would defend with here that he sometimes is not supposed to. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if he has like 9-7, 9-8, pocket eights with an overcall on the flop. 5-6, you know what I mean? 5-6 is the gutter that turns a double gutter on turn. I just find it, especially when you have the ace of hearts here, really, really unlikely that this spot is bluffed, even getting 3.5 to 1. Are you good here 1 out of 4.5 times? I don't know. I just is he gonna make this play here with like queen 10 of hearts here? Like I don't. It's hard for me to find a bluff here.
Yeah, and you have to search to find bluffs. And meanwhile,
Yeah.
like even like Jack 10 of hearts gets there, 5
Right.
6 of hearts gets there,
Yeah.
7 8 of hearts. Like all these heart hands like make like a straight or two pair. And
Hmm.
I have the ace of hearts, so it's hard to find more than like two or three bluffs that are heart combos, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
And I don't think that the hand is played out in a manner where you wouldn't be turning a hand into a bluff here. Like if he had some sort of bluff catcher that he thought was no good, like 9-10 suited, the play would be to check raise the river, right? It wouldn't be to lead, right, with 9-10.
yeah, yeah,
Not for this
yeah,
sizing.
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in game, would I fold here? It kind of sucks, but maybe it's depending on my. I think it's pretty close. I mean, I think on paper, it's probably you could probably go either way with it. I think it might be just a tendency type of thing. I think one of the other reasons why I asked you to sort of call in this hand is I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, even though maybe it wasn't necessarily in this hand, but when you're in a game, and this is kind of what Ryan's game is like, a lot of times where there's a lot of rec players, and then there are some good players too, some for-profit players. Do you find that the for-profit players tend to underbluff the other for-profit players some of the time, or they don't necessarily mix it up because it's a lot easy because people are going after the recreational players for the money?
Yeah, I think a lot of them tend to try to stay out of each other's way.
Yeah, that's what.
I
Yeah,
think like especially like the really good players, like pre-flop, like you'll see like flatting like a lot of strong hands too. Like if a good player opens early and like a good player's next step. So like yeah, I mean there's a lot of just like
is that
yeah,
because
watch
they
the
want to
line.
keep the bad players in the pot, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So what did you end up doing here?
I folded. I folded,
Yeah,
and he told me later that night that he had 7 8 of hearts.
7-8 of hearts.
Yeah, so he backdoored two pair.
Yep. I mean that makes sense, right? Like it sort of seems like a
Yeah,
backdoor type of sizing. Um, and so UTG has 7-8 of hearts for two pair. Yeah, I mean obviously that's a fold that a lot of people aren't going to necessarily make with an overpair. Do you think it would have made any difference if you had like say aces without a heart? Does that become a call like a call? If you, I mean, do you think he's finding a bluff with the ace of hearts somehow?
yeah. I mean, it definitely becomes closer. I thought this one was like a a pretty easy fold, like having, because I couldn't even come up with more than like 2 or 3 bluffs that you
Yeah.
could have. Meanwhile, I'm listing off like 7, 8, 9 different value combos. But without the hearts, it's closer. But just just the sizing, like it's weird to like kind of like what's he trying to get to fold by taking this? You know, it's
Right.
just like
That's what
weird.
I mean. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are saying, oh,
So
could he be blocking with tens or jacks? I don't.
never,
Tens and jacks,
never.
I see. You can make block. First of all, I'm not a huge fan of block bets, right? I talk about that, right? Like, I mean, you can sometimes block. I feel like before the river, and you can use block sizing in position on the turn, right? Instead of checking back, you sort of like we call it like a reverse block, right? Because then it gets you a showdown at the end instead of like facing some sort of gigantic bet if you check back, on the turn. And you can do that with actually a very wide range and balanced of like very strong hands and medium strength hands that want to check back. But there's just no reason to block tens or jacks here on the river, right? Like it's like, what is the point of doing that?
Yeah.
In order to block the river, you need to get called by a worse hand. So unless like you're gonna call with like ace king of spades here, and are you really structuring the bluff in that way when both people call the flop bet? Are you betting the turn, right, on a 7 when it comes 9-3 deuce turn 7? Like what are you? And then so you'd have to bet the turn and call the river, putting him like on a busted front door flush draw, like with like an ace king with no heart. That's why a block from up front doesn't make that much sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, my hand looks like missed hearts or an overpair.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you don't
yeah.
block. I mean, in a spot like this, and in Ryan's spot, you would check, and then, if you are faced with a bet, then you play the hand back in your head. You look at the pot odds, and you figure out whether or not calling or folding is best, or sometimes turning your hand into a bluff, depending on the properties of your hand is best. But thanks for the call, Squish. Hey guys, if you like what you've seen here, please click on the subscribe button and you'll get notified every time we put up a new video. And if you want to check out crushlivepoker.com for the first month free, use the code YTA200. Click on the link right there.